Gary Talk, Gary Talk. Listen to this Gary Talk.
Hey, it's me, Mr. Andrew ESL, here for another Gary Talks. This time, we're going to be talking about gamification in education. So buckle up if you're wearing old-time shoes while we talk about gamification and how it can be an effective teaching tool. First of all, what is gamification? It's an all-encompassing word that really just means turning something into a game. You may have heard on the news when they talk about gamification of the stock market through apps where you can simply click on a stock you want to buy through an easy-to-use interface. Gone are the days when you have to call your broker and put it in an order. Give me 400 shares of leaded gas and typewriters. Now it's more like a game on your phone. You probably use gamification in other ways too. Maybe you don't even know. Have you ever learned language using Duolingo instead of just studying a dictionary? You've been gamified. When gamification is so ubiquitous in today's society, we have to work with it as a teaching tool to make learning more like play, less like work. If you use gamification right, you can trick the brain into thinking they're playing when they're actually working. The benefits are numerous. Pop quiz. If I had to ask you, would you say that gamification helps with A. Breaking down the affective filter to create a less stressful learning environment? B. Allowing students to take more risks because it is a game, and in a game it's not you taking the risk but the player? Or C. Both? If you answered anything at all, boom! You've just been gamified! We're gamifying talking about gamification. Pretty neat, right? It's like the picture in the picture in the picture in the picture, you get it. I'm going to talk to you about two studies that I've read that show us how we can harness the power of gamification to become more effective and effective teachers. Okay, but first let's get back to, oh right, the answer was C. If that part wasn't clear, it was probably clear from context, but the answer was C, both. Now here's the science behind gamification in teaching. I know it sounds complicated, but bear with me, it really isn't. Let me explain. The first study by Dehajide et al., not Al the guy, all like a lot of people, talked about the trends in gamification over the last 10 years and how we can harness the power of gamification. What I got out of it was that gamification allows us to break down the affective filter to create a less stressful environment. We've talked about the affective filter before. It's the thing that stops us from learning because we're stressed and anxious, and that all gets in the way. But when you're playing a game, you're not as stressed. Games are fun. This is why people love using apps like Duolingo to learn a language, as opposed to just reading a Spanish-English dictionary. Apps like Duolingo gamify learning by making everything a fun online quiz. And they also tie in motivation by awarding badges and streaks. That's a typo. I wrote streaks, not stakes, and letting you keep track of your streaks. Going back to the affective filter. The gamified packaging tells the student that this is not work, but play. They're less stressed. We remove the affective filter. They're not thinking about stress and anxiety associated with second language learning. They can focus on learning. They give their attention. That attention produces short-term memory. That short-term memory goes into long-term memory. This produces knowledge. Knowledge produces achievement. The teacher is not seen as a taskmaster, but more of a game show host. The student associates the teacher with positive experiences. They want to go to school. They trust the teacher. They then build self-esteem. A second article that I read by Girardelli talks about the benefits of gamification as well. The nature of gamification is to play. When you're playing a game, there's a disconnect between you as a player and you as the individual. You can take risks as a player that you wouldn't take as an individual. Think of Mario, or not Mario, for copyright purposes. Gario. Think of Super Gario. Super Gario can take a risk that you never would. It's not particularly stressful for Super Gario to jump over a bottomless pit of doom for a gold coin. If he fails, just try again. Continue. If it were me, I would not. The risk is too great, even with the price of gold at the moment being as high as it is. Roleplay activities are also a great way to lower the risk of failure, because the burden of failure is mostly absorbed by your character. You're shielded. All you have to do is have fun. If it didn't work out, press start, try again, just continue. In conclusion, we as teachers need to adapt to the needs of a new generation of learners to maximize learning and get the most out of our limited weekly minutes with our students. Gamification is a great way to do that. Games are all around us. They're ubiquitous in society. Kids grow up with their levels, their badges, their prizes, and we can mimic play in work so that we can make school more like home. We can lower the affective filter to maximize learning. We can create the bonds that will act as the best classroom management tools at our disposal. That's my Gary talk. Oh, and here are the 2 studies I reference. You can read them if you want. I'm not lying. I don't need to lie. The truth is good enough. And as always, you can find me on various internet platforms. Thanks for listening to my Gary talk. This was just part 1, I think. I'll probably do a part 2. But part 1 was long enough, I think. Anyway, thanks for listening to my Gary talk, part 1 on gamification in education.